1978 it all began for her, 7 years ago. And for 3 of those, the last 3, in fact, ever since the Dreaming album, we have heard nothing from Kate until now. And the release of a new LP, Hounds of Love on one side, The Ninth Wave on the other. A concept piece that's prefaced with these words from Tennyson. Wave after wave, each mightier than the last, till last a ninth one, gathering half the deep, and full of voices slowly rose and plunged roaring, and all the wave was in a flame.
Kate Bush is an artist who is one of one. She's influenced so many artists over the years, and of course she was influenced by other music, but Kate took her influences and made her own sound, and I think the pinnacle of her artistic talent resulted in one of my favourite albums, Hounds of Love. Let's see how Kate made the wonderful record that is Hounds of Love. In 1982, Kate released The Dreaming. It was seen as a commercial failure at the time, though it did reach number 3 in the English charts, but compared to her other albums at the time, it was seen as a failure. It's definitely one of Kate's most experimental records and shows a musician not content with repeating herself. And for me, that's not failing. I know it mightn't have done as well in the charts, but that's bullshit really. 1 year before Kate released The Dreaming, she released a cool single called Sat in Your Lap, which had shades of Hounds of Love via the percussion. The percussion sounds were recorded and engineered by Hugh Padgham in the Stone Room at Townhouse Studios, which was known for the famous gated drum sound that Padgham and Phil Collins had created for In the Air Tonight. For such an experimental track, it reached number 11 in the UK charts. The album The Dreaming would be recorded in various studios such as Abbey Road, Townhouse, Odyssey and Advision Studios, and would feature many musicians such as Irish composer Bill Whelan, whose band Planksy and members of the Chieftains were recorded in Windmill Lane in Dublin. Kate said in 1984 about the record, "The main thing I heard was uncommercial, the label at the press, the record company put on it. But for an uncommercial record to go straight in at number 3 in the charts seemed ironic for me." In 1983, Kate decided to leave London. I can't speak for Kate, but I would hazard to say she wanted a change and maybe record in a more calm atmosphere away from the prying eyes of the label. She and her then partner at the time, Del Palmer, moved to a 17th century farmhouse near Sevenoaks, Kent. A 48-track facility was constructed at the barn on her parents' property of East Wickham Farm, which was Kate's childhood home. Her father, Robert, helped Kate and Palmer manage the construction of the studio, which was completed in 1984. The desk that was used was a Soundcraft 2400 series. 2 Studer 24-track tape recorders were synced together with a Q-Lock 310. AMS speakers were used as the monitors, which were powered by an Amcrom amplifier. The control room of the studio was big, but also said to be comfortable, like a living room. It was decorated in blue wallpaper with fluffy white clouds. Unlike many studios, which let no natural light in, there was windows which showed views of the sky, trees and garden. The grand piano that was used was a Groton Steinweg, which I've never actually heard of. An instrument that is all over Hounds of Love and played a big part of the sound was the Fairlight CMI. The Fairlight CMI is a digital synthesizer, music sampler and digital audio workstation introduced in 1975 by Fairlight. It was based on a commercial license of the Quasar M8 developed by Tony Firth of Creative Strategies in Sydney, Australia. It was one of the earliest electronic music workstations with an embedded sampler, and it is credited for coining the term sampling in music. It rose to prominence in the early 1980s and competed with the Synclavier from New England Digital. Other synthesizers that was used on the Hounds of Love album, EMU emulator, and what was said to be her favourite synth, the Yamaha C80, which was used by many artists such as Vangelis and Brian Eno. Vangelis described it as the most important synthesizer in my career, and for me the best analog synthesizer design there ever has been. It needs a lot of practice if you want to be able to play it properly, but that's because it's the only synthesizer I could describe as being a real instrument, mainly because of the keyboard, the way it's built and what you can do with it. The sounds of it are all over the Blade Runner soundtrack, which is a quality soundtrack, and if you haven't heard it, check it out. In the studio, some of the outboard gear used was a Yuri 1176 and 1178 compressors, Drummer and VP Gatekeeper 2 noise gate, A&D 76X RS compressor expanders, reverb units such as AMS and Lexicon 224s were used. It is said that Kate recorded her vocals with a Neumann U47, though there are pictures of Kate in the studio recording with what looks like a Neumann U87. When discussing writing about the album, Kate said, "I wrote the songs for this album in a tiny room overlooking endless fields. I could see the weather coming for miles." Because Kate was recording in her own studio, it meant that she could record at her own pace, and she wasn't burdened by the cost of studio fees. Kate said to Melody Maker, "Knowing the astronomical amount studio time cost used to make me really nervous about being too creative. You can't experiment forever, and I work very, very slowly. I feel a lot more relaxed emotionally now that I have my own place to work." All the tracks were originally put down as demos and turned into the masters. At the time, this wasn't the way records were made, as most artists still went into well-known studios to record their records. Kate's approach is very much like how many artists today record, as there isn't really a demo process as much anymore given how people work with DAWs rather than tape, which was expensive at the time. Kate wrote lots of lyrics for the Hounds of Love album in County Kerry, Ireland. If people watching this don't know Kerry is a beautiful place, like all of the west of Ireland, but I'm very biased because I'm from Ireland and I'm from the west of Ireland. Personally, the Atlantic Ocean is an inspiration for me, and I can only imagine given Kate was there and wrote lyrics there, it was a big one for her too, because that whole area is just beautiful. Like, it's really beautiful. So you can kind of feel, when I'm listening to some of the lyrics, I can kind of feel that vibe from the west of Ireland. It has that vibe. The album is a concept record of two sides, side one being the Hounds of Love and side two being the Ninth Wave. Running Up That Hill starts with a drone sound from the Fairlight, which is at half speed on the Tramcello preset with Quantec reverb added. The main melodic riff also uses the same preset, but it's tweaked with a subtle pitch envelope, and again the Quantec reverb was added in the form of the Quantec room simulator. It was also lowered and slowed down by way of the tape machine running at half speed. For the drums and percussion, it was a mixture of the Linn drum and drummer Stuart Elliott laying down some tom and snare. Guitar was added by Alan Murphy, and Kate's brother Paddy Bush played the balalaika, which is a Russian string instrument that has a triangular body shape to it. Kate's vocals, of course, are excellent and uniquely her. There aren't many harmonies, just in places, and background vocals which get added more as the track progresses. Near the end of the track, there is Kate's normal voice and a manipulated version of her voice where it's pitched down. Stuart Elliott, who added drums to Running Up That Hill, said, "The tension in that track is just remarkable. Every step of the way there's a little twist and turn that's different from the previous verse. An extra line or one line less, or a repeat just in the perfect places. There's absolutely no dead space, it's just so deceptively simple." Kate said the lyrics address the inability of men and women to understand each other. She imagined that by making a deal with God, they could exchange places and reach for a greater understanding. The song was actually originally called A Deal with God, but a record label EMI felt that this was sensitive and could limit its radio play. Kate still prefers the title A Deal with God.
I was trying to say that really a man and a woman can't understand each other because we are a man and a woman, and if we could actually swap each other's roles, if we could actually be in each other's place for a while, I think we'd both be very surprised, and I think it would lead to a greater understanding. And really the only way I could think it could be done was either, I thought a deal with the devil, and I thought, well, no, why not a deal with God? It's, in a way, it's so much more powerful, the whole idea of asking God to make a deal with you. You see, for me, it is still called Deal with God.
It's in the trees. It's coming.
To open up the second track on Hounds of Love, which is called Hounds of Love, Kate uses a sample from the 1957 British horror movie Night of the Demon, and spoken by Maurice Denham. Kate said the film was one of her favourite movies. The track kicks right in with the sampled voice saying, "It's in the trees, it's coming." Like the previous track, Running Up That Hill, the drums add the foundation in the track, which is loop-like in sound. Interestingly, there's no cymbals on the record, which is something Peter Gabriel had incorporated in his album Melt. There is stick drumming from Elliott and Morgan. The gated drum sound was added to the drums to give a bigger sound. The Fairlight was used again, and maybe a Yamaha CS80. Jonathan Williams plays cello. Kate added these backing vocals, which sounds like she's emulating a dog. So, the Hounds of Love.
When I was writing the song, I sort of started coming across this line about hounds. I thought, hounds of love, and the whole idea of being chased by this love that's actually going to, when it gets you, it's just going to rip you to pieces, and have your guts all over the floor. And so this very sort of, being hunted by love. I liked the imagery. I thought it was really good.
So before we get into the details of this track, there are two different versions of this depending on which version of Hounds of Love you have. So there's the original version that was released in 1985 and a second version that was released on the re-released Hounds of Love. Personally, I dig the original version. I think it's a better way to start the track. The writing of The Big Sky was one which Kate laboured over. She said, "It just gave me terrible trouble. It was just one of those songs that kept changing at one point every week. Maybe it was all to do with what the song is about, the fact that it's changing all the time, like the sky always changing." The song is an upbeat track and Kate name drops Ireland within the lyrics. That cloud looks like Ireland. Come on, blow it a kiss now, but be quick. It works better when she's singing it and me talking it, It features Kate playing the Fairlight and piano. Paddy Bush plays Didgeridoo. Alan Murphy's on guitar, Martin Glover on bass, Charlie Morgan on drums and hand claps, Del Palmer on Lindrum programming and hand claps, and Morris Pett on percussion. The drums on The Big Sky, like the previous two tracks, is basically a Lindrum pattern programmed and real organic drums and percussion added over the pattern. They are simplistic, but I think they work perfectly for the tracks. Kate had some really cool vocal chant elements. Kate's a brilliant singer. She was a brilliant singer. She's still a brilliant singer. I love the tone of her voice and that kind of diversity in her voice.
That was really about, the thing of when I used to do it a lot when I was a kid. We'd go out somewhere and sit up and look at the sky. And if you watch the clouds long enough, they take on different shapes. You can see dinosaurs and castles. And at the time I was writing this album, we were living in the country, and my keyboards and stuff were in this room overlooking a valley, and I'd sit and watch the clouds rolling uphill towards me.
Mother Stands for Comfort changes the mood of the record, not only in style, but it's also much a very darker tone. The track is said to be about a mother protecting her child who has took someone's life. It's the only song from the first side of the album that was not released as a single. The Lindrum is used as the percussion bed of the track. Kate again uses the Fairlight to trigger samples of broken glass and other effects. There is a fretless bass played by Eberhard Weber. It's very 80s sounding and to me it sounds like a Chapman stick. Kate plays piano and delivers yet again another beautiful vocal.
And the track's really talking about the love of a mother, and in this case she's the mother of a murderer, in that she's basically prepared to protect her son against anything, because in a way it's also suggesting that the son is using the mother as much as the mother is protecting him. It's a bit of a strange subject matter, isn't it, really? I still dream.
Cloudbusting is one of my favourite tracks on the album, and I think it's one of Kate's best songs. The genesis of the song came from when Kate found Peter Reich's memoir, A Book of Dreams, in a bookshop. The track begins with the Medici Sextet playing spizzicato as Kate sings. The strings were arranged by Dave Lawson, who played synth clavier on Kate's song There Goes a Tenor. Kate's brother Paddy plays the balalaika. Kate played synth on the track, which would include her trusty Fairlight. The percussion is a mix of organic drums and electronic drums. Again, the Lindrum would have been used. The organic drums were played by Stuart Elliott and Charlie Morgan. Backing vocals feature Brian Bath, Paddy Bush, Carter Bush and Del Palmer. The first lyric of the track, which I love, is I Still Dream of Organon, which is a line taken from A Book of Dreams. The video is rather cool. It's by Kate and Terry Gilliam, who was in Monty Python, and it's telling the story about Reich and his son. Kate plays the son and Donald Sunderland plays Peter Reich. To get Donald Sunderland In the video, Kate found out which hotel he was staying at from actress Julie Christie's hairdresser, who went to his room to personally ask him to participate in the project. The videos was shown in some cinemas. Due to the difficulties obtaining work visas for Sunderland for a short notice, the actor offered to work on the music video for free. Although the events depicted in the story took place in Maine, which is in the USA, the newspaper clipping in the music video reads, "The Oregon Times," likely a reference to Reich's home and laboratory Organon. The cloudbusting machine in the video was designed and constructed by the same people who worked on the Xenomorph, which is Alien, and bears only a superficial resemblance to the real Cloudbusters. At one point in the video, Kate pulls out a copy of Peter Reich's A Book of Dreams from Sunderland's coat. Around the same time of the release, Kate sent Peter Reich a VHS copy of the music video. Reich was immediately a fan. He later told Dazed magazine, "Quite magically, the British musician had tapped precisely into a unique and magical fulfillment of father-son devotion, emotion and understanding. They had captured it all."
This was very special to me because it was all inspired by a book that I'd found years ago. And I went into a bookshop I used to go into regularly and just saw this. I liked the title. It said Book of Dreams, and took the book off the shelf. I'd never done it before, an unknown book. And it was this beautiful story by this guy called Peter Reich. And it's all about his view of his father, but through the eyes of a child. So it was all about his childhood and how he saw his father as this incredibly magical figure.
As this was still in the age when records were produced with two sides, artists would sequence albums with that in mind. Cloudbusting is the perfect end to side one of the quote-unquote Hounds of Love side, before we get to the next side, the ninth wave. The ninth wave is a conceptual piece that spans the 7 songs on side 2 of the album. The story is a person who is stranded at sea with a life jacket and a light, one which Kate alludes to in the first track, And Dream of Sheep. The first lyric of the song opens with the words, "Little light shining, little light will guide them to me." Instrumentally, the track is rather sparse with piano, fairlight, with Donna Lunny playing what I think is an Irish bouzouki. The official video for the song was released to coincide with her 2014 tour, and the video is Kate with a life jacket floating in the water. The vocal was performed live, while filming Kate lying in a huge water tank at Pinewood Studios. She spent so long in the water during the first day of filming that she contracted mild hypothermia.
And really, for me, from the beginning, the Ninth Wave was a film. That's how I thought of it. It's the idea of this person being in the water. How they've got there, we don't know, but the idea is that they've been on a ship and they've been washed over the side, so they're alone in this water. Now, I find that horrific imagery, the thought of being completely alone in all this water. And they've got a life jacket on with a little light, so that if anyone should be travelling at night, they'll see the light and know they're there. And they're absolutely terrified. And they're completely alone at the mercy of their imagination, which again, I personally find such a terrifying thing. The power of one's own imagination being let loose on something like that. And the idea that they've got it in their head that they mustn't fall asleep, because if you fall asleep when you're in the water, I've heard that you roll over and so you drown. So they're trying to keep themselves awake.
Things take a darker turn with the next track, Under Ice. It starts with the Fairlight playing the tramcello setting, which was used on the first side of the record. I do wish they used real strings, but that's just me, I guess. Again, like on the previous track, And Dream of Sheep, it is sparse in sound. There are time changes from 4/4 to 3/4, which I think gives a sound of movement, of waves, and of the person who is in a disorientated state and thinks there's something moving underwater before realising it's him or her. When Kate sings, "It's me," and it fading out gives the impression of the character being taken away by the current.
This was all kind of coming together by itself. I didn't have much to do with this. I just sat down and wrote this little tune on the Fairlight with the cello sound, and it sounded very operatic, and I thought, well, great, because it conjured up the image of ice, and it's really simple to record. I mean, we did the whole thing in a day, I guess. Again, it's very lonely. It's terribly lonely. They're all alone on like this frozen lake. And at the end of it, it's the idea of seeing themselves under the ice in the river. So I mean, we're talking real nightmare stuff here. And at this point, when they say, you know, my God, it's me, you know, it's me under the ice. These sort of visitors come to wake them up, to bring them out of this dream so that they don't drown.
Wake up.
Waking the Witch, which starts off with lovely piano chords and voices talking over the top, telling the person who is in the water to wake up, which I think Kate uses the idea of different voices to represent the friends and family of the person who is at sea, urging him or her to wake up. At 1 minute 19 seconds, the song goes in another direction when the percussion enters with Kate's voice manipulated in a stutter effect. The effect was achieved by moving the record switch quickly on the tape machine. Del Parmer later said in an interview with Sound on Sound when talking about the effect, "I said it would be just a mess, but she said, look, just do it." Of course it worked, and I had to eat humble pie. I've eaten so much humble pie over the years that I'm putting on weight. Kate plays the two roles in the song, which play out on two levels, one being the current situation of the person at sea, and the other harking back to witch trials where a woman would be dunked in water to see if she sank or floated. If they sank and drowned, they were innocent, and if they didn't, they were found guilty and sentenced to death, which the sad reality was, no matter what the outcome, it was death. Kate sings in Latin, Spiritus Sanctus in nomine, which translates loosely to Holy Spirit is the name. Kate goes from God to Satan in another section where Kate sings in Latin again, Deus ide domino inferno. There is a helicopter and a voice that enters saying, get out of the wave, get out of the water. The helicopter is actually a sample that was taken from Pink Floyd's The Wall.
My mother's in there, my father, my brothers Paddy and John, Brian Tench, the guy that mixed the album with us, is in there, Daryl's in there, Robbie Coltrane does one of the voices. It was just trying to get lots of different characters and all the ways that people wake you up. Like, you know, when you sort of fall asleep at your desk at school and the teacher says, I think it's very interesting, the whole concept of witch hunting and the fear of women's power. In a way, it's very sexist behaviour, and I feel that female intuition and instincts are very strong and are still put down, really. And in this song, this woman is being persecuted by the witch hunter and a whole jury, although she's committed no crime, and they're trying to push her under the water.
Things take on a lighter tone sonically with the track Watching You Without Me. The track has a calmer quality, especially when coming off the previous dark track, Waking the Witch. It is a rather minimal track in sound. It's got Lindrum, Stuart Elliott on tom work, Danny Thompson on bass, and Kate's voice. Michael Kamen's string arrangements appear in sections. There are some sounds such as seagulls in the background near the end of the track, along with Kate's chopped up sounding vocals, which is the same sound she used on the previous track.
Now, this poor sod has been in the water for hours and been witch hunted and everything. Suddenly they're kind of at home, in spirit, seeing their loved one, sitting there waiting for them to come home. And, you know, watching the clock and obviously very worried about where they are, maybe making phone calls and things. But there's no way that you can actually communicate because they can't see you, they can't hear you. And I find this really horrific. These are all like my own personal worst nightmares, I guess, put into song.
Jig of Life takes another detour into trad territory. Kate loved Ireland. Don't blame her. I love Ireland too. There's a bit of biasness here. She would visit her mother's family regularly in Ireland. At 1 minute 41 seconds, the Irishness kicks in, and of course, I am completely biased and I love it. The section begins with John Sheenahan's fiddle, and as it plays, the track builds up with different instrumentation from Donal Lunny on bouzouki and bowron, and Liam O'Flynn on uilleann pipes. It was brilliantly arranged by Bill Whelan. The jig stops when Kate says, I put this moment here. A voice responds saying over here and then delivers a spoken word section. It was recited by John Carter Bush. Originally it was to be spoken by an Irish artist, but he put on an Irish accent. It doesn't actually sound too bad. I've heard much worse, but it's not too bad actually. The Irish instrumentation for the track was recorded in Windmill Lane Studios in Dublin.
At this point in the story, it's the future self of this person coming to visit them, to give them a bit of help here. I mean, it's about time they had a bit of help. So it's their future self saying, look, don't give up, you've got to stay alive, because if you don't stay alive, that means I don't, and I'm alive, I've had kids, I've been through years and years of life, so you have to survive, you mustn't give up. This was written in Ireland. At one point, I did quite a lot of writing in Ireland, lyrically particularly, and again, it was a tremendous sort of elemental dose I was getting, all this beautiful countryside, and spending a lot of time outside and walking, so it had this tremendous sort of stimulus from the outside. And this was one of the tracks that the Irish musicians that we worked with was featured.
I get out of my car, step into the night.
Hello Earth is the longest track on Hounds of Love. It clocks in at 6 minutes 13 seconds. It's also the song with the most players on one track. It includes Stuart Elliott on drums, Brian Bath on guitar, Eberhard Weber on bass, Liam O'Flynn on pipes, Donal Lunny on bouzouki, the Richard Hickos singers providing the choir, and an orchestra with arrangements by Michael Kamen. Lyrically, the protagonist of the story is looking down on Earth, observing the planet. With just one hand held up high, I can blot you out of sight. Makes me think that Kate is talking from the perspective of God for just a brief moment. It's really a beautiful song and has some quite lovely sections. Kate harkens back to Waking the Witch, because at the end of that song, there's a voice that says, get out of the waves, get out of the water. And Kate sings that in the bridge section.
We had the whole song, it was all there, but these huge great holes in the choruses, and I knew I wanted to put something in there, and I'd had this idea to put a vocal piece in there that was like this traditional tune I'd heard used in the film Nosferatu. And really everything I came up with was rubbish, really, compared to what this piece was saying. So we did some research to find out if it was possible to use it, and it was, so that's what we did. We really recorded the piece, and I kind of made up words that sounded like what I could hear was happening on the original. And suddenly there were these beautiful voices in these choruses that had just been like two black holes. And it was the idea of turning the whole thing upside down and looking at it from completely above. That image of if you were lying in water at night and you were looking up at the sky all the time. I wonder if you wouldn't get the sense of as the stars were reflected in the water, a sense of like, you could be looking up at water that's reflecting the stars from the sky that you're in. And the idea of them looking down at the earth and seeing these storms forming over America and moving around the globe, and they have this like huge, fantastically overseeing view of everything. Everything is in total perspective, and way, way down there somewhere there's this little dot in the ocean.
The final track on the Hounds of Love album is The Morning Fog. It has this airy, light feel to it. It feels kind of like the morning, and like after a bad dream or after a storm and the sky clears and it's all sunny and it's all sweet again. Lyrically on the surface, it's rather ambiguous how the story ends, but as Kate says herself when discussing the track,
well, that's really meant to be the rescue of the whole situation, where now, suddenly out of all this darkness and weight comes light. The weightiness is gone, and here's the morning. And it's meant to feel very positive and bright and uplifting from the very sort of dense darkness of the previous track. And although it doesn't say so in my mind, this was the song where they were rescued, where they get pulled out of the water. And it's very much a song of seeing perspective, of really, of being so grateful for everything that you have, that you're never grateful of in ordinary life because you just abuse it totally. So, and it was also meant to be one of those kind of thank you and good night songs. The little finale where everyone does a little dance and then the bow and then they leave the stage.
I think it's kind of a story about being saved, Like a song can mean one thing on the surface and then mean many things at once. I think it's a rather sweet, nice way to end the record. It just has this really peaceful quality. And like I said, the calm after the storm. Hounds of Love is a fantastic record. It's one of my favourite records. It's really unique because Kate is unique and there's only really one Kate Bush. I mean, so many people have tried to copy her over the years and I would say a lot of them have failed. But yeah, there's only one Kate Bush and it's a great record. So if we start off with the intro, I used the Arturia CMX on this choir setting. There's a few buses, so that goes through this room reverb and it goes through this sunset sound reverb and it goes through this T-verb and it sounds like this. The drums for Running Up That Hill were programmed through a Lindrum. I don't have a Lindrum, but I have a Lindrum VST, which is a really good one by G-Force. And I also used Impact, which is Presonus's kind of drum program. And I put other Lindrum samples I had under that just to kind of give it a bit of weight. There's also real drums played by Stuart Elliott. So I played my Ludwig floor tom. It's just adding a bit of texture and a bit of weight. So it's not too loud in the mix of the Lindrum sounds. So I've bussed all the drums and there's a fab filter on it. There's a chow tape plugin on it. There's a smooth operator plugin on it, which is just to balance out the low end a bit. And there's my SSL clone, which is hardware. It's a TK Audio SSL clone, bus compressor, which is a pretty badass compressor. So that's on it, but it's about 40% of the mix. All the drums are also sent to an insert, which is a gated reverb, and the plugin is called the T-verb. It's made by Eventide, it's really good. And this is how the drums sound all together. For the lead sound of Running Up That Hill, Kate used a Fairlight CMI synthesizer. I obviously don't have a Fairlight CMI synthesizer, but I used a sample library to recreate that. I had such a hard time trying to find the right sample that Kate used because she used a very specific one called a tram cello. And on the Arturia CMI Fairlight sample library, there's a cello too, which sounds kind of like it, but it doesn't sound exactly like it. But I actually found one that actually has the tram cello. It's pretty close. It's pretty close. Not exactly, but it's close. The sample library is called Moonlight CMX. It's by Soundprops, and it's actually a free sample library, and it sounds really good. So I'll put a link in the description if people want to download it. There's portamento on the riff, and what I did was I put it at 33% the portamento. There's a bit of compression on it to just take a little bit of the peaks away. There's a bit of EQ on it, and it's running through the room reverb and the delay. For the chords in the background, again I'm using the tram cello. It's on the same settings as the tram cello on the lead part, so it's using all the same settings and it's using all the same inserts. On the master bus, I used a bit of EQ and I used my outboard tape hardware, which is just to add a little saturation to the sound. Everything was going through tape on that record, so everything's getting saturated. And digital can be very kind of sterile sounding sometimes if you just, everything's just as it is, if you know what I mean. These recreations that I do, they're not a one-to-one recreation of the track. I'm trying to get close to it because sometimes when I've done these and I've uploaded the video, I've got these copyright strikes because it's saying that I actually took the song and I just uploaded it. It's not registering it as a recreation, which would normally be under a cover song. It would be under that kind of thing. I think if I ever get a Patreon going, I could probably do or try and do a more one-to-one kind of recreation of it that you're trying to get the exact sound of it. So we'll see. Who knows? Thank you for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Take it easy. Goodbye.